Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back with you guys for another episode of what is our Arsenal transfer show, where I've got something to tell you. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back with you guys for another episode, and me talking quieter today. There's a reason why I'm talking quietly. So for those of you that are wondering why I'm trying to talk in as hushed a tone as possible, had some family around last night. I've got a very young child who did not sleep much last night, but that meant that, of course, their parents didn't either, and they're trying to get a little bit of shut-eye this morning. So I'm trying to keep as quietly as I can for them and their duties, but I didn't want to leave you without a show, and got some stuff to talk about, of course, this morning as well. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Really appreciate you being here. As always, please do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're indeed new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Good morning to Matt G, Blackshine, Stevie, Steve, Sweating Merlot, Grantley Poos. We've got Abe, we've got Carl and Damien and Sweating Merlot, Liam. We've got Carlton, we've got Mohammed and Paul, Arasilki, we've got other Paul, Stephen, John, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It is incredibly appreciated. So if you could drop a like and push us on our way to 61k, that would be fantastic. So, little bit of a news from my personal side of things, and that's that as of this very moment, I'm very pleased to say that I have taken on the role of Football.London's chief Arsenal writer position. This, of course, is quite a big thing. And firstly, as I mentioned in my tweet yesterday and in my post on Blue Sky, I do want to just say a quick thank you to Kaya, of course, who was my colleague at Football London and was in the position prior to me and gave me a lot of guidance and advice, and is now moving on to pastures new himself, and is going to do some amazing things where that next gig is. I'm not going to tell you what it is because that's all up to him. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Kaya, and of course to a lot of the people that helped make this happen. It's been kind of an absolutely ridiculous 3 to 4 years since kind of 2020 pandemic, when I was still teaching, and I just thought in that moment that I was just not happy doing what I was doing, and I was doing the channel on the side, and I was talking about Arsenal and covering Arsenal and writing about Arsenal and writing about other football clubs as well. I was like, I just want to do this as my job. I just want to do everything I can to make this the thing. And 4 years later, here we are, being in a position now where, of course, I'll be at all of, barring any that I'm on holiday or whatever reason, Mikel Arteta's press conferences, going to every single Arsenal game, again, barring any holidays, home and away, European games, pre-season, fingers crossed. It's a really humbling moment, and one that I am really looking forward to the challenge of kind of breaking some stories, hopefully, and kind of giving some information and getting insights into Arsenal, and talking about transfers, of course. Now, I know that some of your questions I've already been asked by some people. How does this affect the channel? As I was asked actually a question the other day about this. The question being, what's the end goal, or what's the main thing? The main thing is always my job. My job is what pays my bills. My job is what keeps me with a roof over my head, and of course my job is very, very important to me. But the channel is also really, really important to me, and this community is and will always be an amazing part of my life. Now, the 8 a.m. show is to my intent and all intents and purposes not changing, not being lost. But obviously you need to understand that there are going to be days where there's an early press conference, so I've got to drive up to the Shelby Realty Training Centre, and I won't be able to do an 8 a.m. show. There'll be times where I may have to catch a flight to of course, go and see Arsenal elsewhere in the world. I might be, in transit on some days, but of course, I will give you plenty of notice to the best of my ability of when there will and won't be shows. I'll also be doing my absolutely hardest to, when if there isn't a show that I can do live, that there will be something pre-recorded and a show with some guests that will be podcast based, of course. So it is still very much my intention to continue this and to keep it going, because this, for me, is the biggest reason why I get to do what I do. That you listening are the biggest reason why I get to do what I do. And so I never ever want to lose that. The channel is always going to be, to every ounce of my energy and power, continuing as usual, as normal. So please don't worry about that fact for now. There is no need to, and I'll be doing whatever I can. Of course, I've recently moved house, as you guys will very much well know, which has put me closer to London, which makes work a lot easier, and getting to places like the training centre is much, much easier as well. So hopefully I should be absolutely fine still doing the shows and things like that. And usually the press conferences are in the afternoon anyway, but sometimes they are in the morning and I'll have to be there early. So just be aware of that. But thank you again. I can see all of your very kind comments in the chat box. It is all very humbling indeed. And I don't forget for a second that all of you helped this happen. So less about me, more about Arsenal. Let's jump into today's stories, and we start with a roundup of yesterday's Premier League action. Of course, Manchester City finally getting a win, their second in 14 matches, rounding up as 1 in 7 so far. 2-0 win at Leicester. It wasn't exactly the most prolific or comfortable victory for Man City by any stretch of the imagination. Leicester's definitely had chances and probably should have even scored a goal or two on the day, but Man City have got that win, and we'll have to wait and see indeed what that does to their form. Crystal Palace beat Southampton 2-1, coming from behind, of course, in this game to get a couple of goals. Southampton and Aaron Ramsdale really struggling, even under new management. Very much struggling indeed. Nottingham Forest moved above Arsenal into second place in the table after their incredible start to the season, and one of the first teams to manage to beat Everton. Everton, of course, having drawn with Arsenal, drawn with Chelsea, drawn with City. Nottingham Forest getting a result and moving into second place in the table, doing some very impressive things indeed. Fulham drawing 2-2 with Bournemouth, and another loss of points for Ange Postecoglou and Tottenham, as they conceded a 86th minute equaliser to Wolves. It was and will be continually funny to see what happens at that club. And of course, lastly, Liverpool absolutely battered a West Ham side that frankly just get battered because we battered them. They are getting battered by Liverpool. It's not a surprising result at all. And it means that, of course, this is the last round of games for most of these teams in the first half of the season. Today, we've got some late kickoffs. Aston Villa taking on Brighton at 7:45. The same time, Ipswich host Chelsea, and at 8 o'clock, Manchester United host Newcastle. In terms of the table and what this does for things, of course, in the Premier League, in terms of where teams are sitting right now, Liverpool did indeed move the full 9 points clear of Arsenal, of course, having played 18 games now, both of them. Liverpool's next game is at home to Manchester United, who they have already beaten at Old Trafford this season, but that is definitely going to be an interesting derby, one that Ruben Amorim will be looking to claim another victory in one of the North West derbies this season, having beaten Manchester City already, of course. Nottingham Forest, as I mentioned, moved above Arsenal. They're on 37 points after 19 games. It's amazing to think that this is a side that were, considered relegation battlers and are already 3 points from hitting that magic 40-point mark, and now looking at European qualification for this season. Arsenal on 36. Chelsea also playing today can move above Arsenal by 2 points and overtake Nottingham Forest into second place should they beat Ipswich. Manchester City, with their win, moved up to 5th in the table above Bournemouth and Fulham, who both drew. Newcastle, of course, play later on today. They can move ahead of Manchester City and put them back down into 6th place, as can Aston Villa, who can also move on to 31 points, but they would need a significant number of goals to move above Man City on 31 points should they win their game. Spurs, despite drawing, of course, moved up the table into 11th place. Manchester United still down in 14th in the table as well. Now, as of course, one of the main first stories I wrote yesterday in the new role was getting some information to confirm nor deny, but definitely deny, that Fabio Vieira is not coming back to Arsenal. I'm told reliably that he is not returning to the club and that there is an expectation for him as Vita Bruno has already explained as Porto manager, for him to continue with Porto on loan until the end of this season. So all of those rumours, those claims that are flights and things like this going on, was not the case. And Fabio Vieira will not be rejoining Arsenal, to the best of our knowledge, unless something dramatic happens in the next few weeks. But there is no expectation that he is indeed being recalled to Arsenal. So we can nip that story in the bud. Meanwhile, the main story to talk about today is of Lorenzo Pellegrini, a player, of course, that's been linked with Arsenal in the past, a player, of course, that has been very much doing the rounds in Italian football. But Damien Efena, Italian journalist, reporting that supposedly Arsenal are keen on the Roma. I want to say Roma. Yes, Roma attacking midfielder, 28 years of age. He has 0 goals and 1 assist so far this season for Roma. Has been their captain for quite some time, but has been moved out of the side in recent weeks. Instead, we're seeing Selamakas and El Shaarawy kind of gain plenty more minutes. They're not really playing with an attacking midfielder. That's the main reason why he's moved it out of kind of the team. Mainly, the system is not really fitting. And if Arsenal need kind of a backup to Martin Ødegaard, Lorenzo Pellegrini would fit that mold of player, but I can't see this one really being one that happens. I mean, an attacking midfielder might be something for the summer to consider, but in January, his profile is just not what Arsenal are in need of. It strikes me as a bit of kind of a depth option. I mean, his stats are very, very good. When you have a look at kind of his FB profile, non-penalty goals is in the 91st percentile, shots 98th percentile, non-penalty XG and XAG 92nd percentile, progressive passes received 92nd percentile, touches in the attacking penalty area 89th percentile, shot creating actions 82nd percentile. That's against other midfielders. But then you look at attacking midfielders and he doesn't rank very highly at all in terms of any of those kind of statistics specifically, but he does rank quite well against other attacking midfielders for his defensive work, and we do know indeed that Mikel Arteta does enjoy attacking players that can defend. In fact, I saw a stat earlier on this season, earlier on yesterday, that said that Arsenal have not conceded, and I was trying to think of a game to disprove the point, and I was struggling, and maybe you can tell me, but there was a claim yesterday that apparently Arsenal didn't concede in a single game more than 2 goals in 2024. Now, I'm just going to do a quick look back across the year, but I'm pretty sure that this is accurate. Arsenal have indeed not conceded more than 2 goals in any match at any point during the entirety of 2024. We've conceded 2 goals a fair few times. Leicester, of course. West Ham, of course, scored twice. Palace scored twice against us the other day. Man City scored twice, and the 2-2 Liverpool scored twice as well. Aston Villa beat us 2-0. Was it 2-0 or was it 1-0? I think it was 2. Liverpool beat us 2-1 in pre-season, to be fair. I don't think that counts, but still in pre-season we didn't concede more than twice. Spurs scored twice in the North London derby against us, but we won 3-2. Yeah, Villa did beat us 2-0. Bayern Munich scored twice against us, 2-2 at the Emirates earlier on this season. But yeah, I'm looking back, and Arsenal did not concede more than 2 goals in any game at any point at all across the year, which is a good foundation. But it's, if you're not, I also was listening to the Arscast yesterday, and James brought up a point that I think there's something like around half of Arsenal's games this Premier League season, Arsenal have either scored 1 or 0 goals during the campaign, which when you're conceding no more than 2, sure, that's good, but we need to score more goals. And this is why we're going into this January window with hopes that indeed we're going to go into the market and add another attacking player. Right, let's go to part 2 though, and your questions right after this. Lovely stuff. Cup of tea in the morning. What can't beat it? Right, let's go into the chat, shall we? and have a look at some of your questions that you've got. Use a capital Q. It does help them stand out in the chat. I'm going to be around for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. And then I'm going to go get a bagel from the local bagel shop, which I'm very much looking forward to. Right. A1 says, anything other than Kudus is going to be underwhelming to me. I can't like anything. Anything? Really? Like Mbremo, Gittins, Lookman, any of these? Oh, by the way, speaking of Lookman, did you see? I know that this probably is out of date, but I tweeted it from the Gooner Talk Twitter account. If you're a follower, there was a clip on AFTV of Turkish having a absolute nightmare. Not Turkish himself having the nightmare, but just like having to deal with, I think Cecil and Robbie both suggesting that Raheem Sterling is better than Ademola Lookman. If you've not seen the clip, please go back and look at the clip because goodness gracious me, the copium there was on another level. Cyrus says, we don't need Pellegrini now. What we need is a versatile right winger and a striker. Stephen says, Pellegrini, if true, Ethan's agent must be working on a January exit. Arteta just doesn't seem to trust or believe in Ethan. I don't agree with that, Stephen. I mean, first of all, it's just a wild link that one person is suggesting that we've rounded up in today's stories. But I don't think it's fair to say that Arteta doesn't trust Ethan. The kid's 17 years of age. You know, he's trying to integrate him. He's given him plenty of minutes this season as well. We started him in games this season as well. So I don't think it's probably fair to say that he doesn't trust him. And Anne says it's rubbish that Arteta doesn't trust Ethan. He's played more minutes in crucial games than I thought that he would have done this season. I really think it's an overreaction to say that Arteta doesn't trust Waneri. He's played him not as much as I would like him to, but I still think that he's shown plenty more minutes than maybe some thought that he would. Amira says, so what I'm hearing is that every press conference, us listeners will get to ask Arteta questions through you. In all seriousness, though, congratulations on your 100%. Yeah, this is my worry. I just want to put this out there. I'm not going into those press conferences asking the questions that you leave in comments. Don't leave me comments like, ask Arteta what you think about this transfer. Ask Arteta why he hasn't signed this player. It's not going to happen. It's just, I'm sure that a lot of our conversations will inspire some questions. But that's not what this is. so don't think for a second that's going to happen. Alex says, what's happened to our talent ID? Why are we considering recruitment of older players that are not even ceiling risers and will have no market value? Again, it's really important to point out that this is a rumor. Like, don't take it any further than it needs to. We haven't signed this player. We should only judge Arsenal on the signings they make, not the links that we see here, there, and everywhere. We need to judge them on the signings that we make. And then we have to say that the signings that we've made have turned Arsenal into a team that were 11th when Arteta took over, into a team that now compete for titles. So let's not go over the top, shall we? Love Me Forever says, man, I don't care if they break the bank for Isak now. We need to, how can we fix the rest in the summer? We just need that player with his style of play. It fits us so perfectly. There was some suggestions yesterday that Newcastle would not be selling him for anything less than £150 million, in which case Arsenal should be going elsewhere in terms of getting somebody else. CNS says, do you think there's a general misunderstanding among fans of how a top squad works and that signing two players will severely limit playtime for those who expect to play with the creating balance? I don't know about that. There's definitely a misconception and a misunderstanding about how the transfer window works amongst some supporters, definitely. But that's because you're only exposed to so much, you know. There's things that, you know, you find out, even in my position, you find stuff out that you can't even talk about because things get said off the record and, you know, things that, you know, you need to be double or triple sourcing before you end up discussing because, you know, you're putting your name against those words. But I think there is an element of, you see it quite often where people make assumptions and run with it as if they think that's exactly how it works when it doesn't. But, I think that Arsenal will always be one or two players away, but I think that about every team. Even Liverpool right now, you could argue that they're one or two players away. They still need a midfielder, a defensive midfielder in particular. They still need another centre-back. Like, teams are always going to be one or two players away. It's just about how you cope with the players you have and how you cope with injuries and how many injuries you get and ultimately how you perform being the key thing as well. So the whole thing about Arsenal being one or two players away, we're always going to be one or two players away because that's just how football works. Every year you have to sign more players. Every year players get older or move on or be sold. So you always need new players. It's rare that you ever see nobody brought in during a summer transfer window. Ola says, ask Arteta if he would consider signing Mohamed Salah. Mr. Thugi says, I tried to look it up, but there are informations both ways on Lookman. Some sites say he has a release clause of 55 million euros and others don't. I'm not sure what the truth is. In which case, it's probably best to assume that he doesn't have one, because if you assume that he does have one and you're wrong, that's probably worse. So while there is this conflicting information on that, it's probably best that we assume that there is no release clause in the contract. But I sincerely hope that there is. Let's go to Paul, who says, is there any possibility of Arsenal making a move for Johan Bakayoko since his contract expires in the summer of 2026 and he is yet to extend? The problem that there is with Bakayoko is that he's come out and said, and there are reports in the Netherlands, that he is only willing to move to a club where he's guaranteed game time. Now, with Saka out, he would be guaranteed game time until Saka returns. And we don't know whether or not that opens the door for a player like Bakayoko who would consider a move if they're guaranteed minutes. But of course, knowing that when Saka comes back, those minutes are going to be severely hampered by his return. So it's very, very difficult. Subam says, if Slot wins the title in his first season without a major title, I have supported Arteta a lot, but that serious questions need to be asked. This one always gets me, and I know that you're not the only one who feels this way, but ask yourself this. He's taken over a Liverpool squad. Are Liverpool expected to compete for titles and have been expected to compete for titles over the last 5 years? Yes, because that's the position they are. He's not taking over a club like Arsenal when Arteta took over Arsenal. He's also not a bad coach. He's a very decent coach with very, very good players and world-class players. So that one never... The idea that Liverpool and Arsenal can be kind of like compared in the sense of if Slot wins the title in his first season with a team that's competed for the title over the last 5 seasons plus, there's always going to be that question mark of, well, obviously there was a chance that could happen. It doesn't mean that when you get a new manager and you just go immediately back to square one, you inherit what you've inherited. And what he's inherited there as a good coach is a very, very good squad. And Mohamed Salah, who is probably playing right now at 32 even, the best football of his career. He just scored to make it 20 goals this season for the 8th, I think it's the 7th or 8th consecutive season in a row that he scored 20 goals. It's absolutely mad to think that. Jason says, nonsense. Sloat should not... Sloat, sorry, he said Sloat. I'll read it as you've written it, Jason. Nonsense. Sloat should not be winning the title over Arteta. Why not? Why not? He's got a more expensive squad than Arteta. He's got a better team than Arteta. Well, why not? I struggle with this. I'm absolutely up for a debate about whether or not, it's still a brilliant achievement. A brilliant, brilliant achievement. But player for player, like Liverpool have had a better squad than us because they've spent more than us since Klopp came in compared to when Arteta came in. Their squad is a more expensive squad than Arsenal's is. So why, is my question. Why is it that they categorically... This is the key point. I'm not saying that Liverpool winning the league is not disappointing from an Arsenal perspective. It would be disappointing because we wouldn't have taken advantage of the season that Man City finally slipped up. And of course, there are external factors for that. Jason says, last year you were not saying Liverpool... Mate, Liverpool were in the title race up until the last few games of the season, Jason. They only fell away. They only fell out of the title race when they lost away to Everton. Up until that point, they were competing with us. This time last season, Liverpool were ahead of us in the table, were they not? I'm pretty sure that Liverpool, or at least the season before that as well, Liverpool were leading the way in terms of the title race. So, Jason, I don't know what you're talking about when you say last year you were not saying. Feel free to go back and show me where I was not. But that's just a lie because, of course, Liverpool were in the title race last season. It was talked about as one of the best Premier League seasons because it was a 3-way title race. Last season was talked about regularly as one of the rarities that there were 3 teams competing for the title at once. So this idea that Liverpool couldn't win it last season is just incorrect, isn't it? It's just not true. To quote Ed Miliband, it's just wrong. It's just not true. Jabulo says, this is propaganda. This guy, I'm struggling to understand the thinking. Arteta has been at Arsenal for the past 5 years. He has been building this team himself, so slot without new players. It doesn't work that way. I really don't get the mindset. It's like people think it's a video game where you pick up a new team and you go to square one, or that he's in phase one because it's his first season. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. If you're a manager, as it's not like this is his first job. He's been at finals. He's won trophies in the past. He's come to the club that's got, one of the best teams. It's got the best attacking group of players in the league. It's got the best centre half in the league. It's got arguably the best goalkeeper in the league. It's got some of the best players in the world. And you're saying he's starting from zero. Zero. I'm sorry, but that's just not true, is it? Like, it's just not true. So, yeah, very, very silly. I'm talking as quietly as I can because I've got people over who are trying to sleep. Love Me Forever says in the chat box. That's why I'm talking a little bit more reserved this morning. Carl says, what do you think? What do you now think about our quality/quantity? I don't know if Liverpool rotate more or less than us. It feels like it. But for me, the only flaw Arteta has is squad rotation. Congrats, Tom. Thanks, Carl. If you look at the forward options that Liverpool have, Salah starts pretty much every game. Then what they do is they pretty much rotate between Gakpo, Jota, Diaz, and Nunez. They've got 4 players that are arguably of equal to a degree. There's a gap between some of them. You could argue Nunez probably the worst, Diaz probably the best, then Gakpo and Jota somewhere in the middle. But you've got 4 players there who can rotate like far more effectively. And to be honest, like if you look at both of those signings, Diaz and Gakpo, both of those signings were made in a January transfer window. And that's why, for me, that there is not any excuse for Arsenal this window. You can sign top players in January. And Arsenal absolutely need to be going into the market this January and adding players of quality, because Liverpool have done it in past seasons. So we need to go out and do it. But they're able to rotate more. Their depth is stronger than that of Arsenal's, because ultimately when Klopp came in, he didn't have to rip up the squad. He had existing players of quality already there. And they added, of course, some top quality earlier on. And Arsenal didn't have the resources that Liverpool had in terms of sellable assets. Arsenal were cancelling contracts. Liverpool was selling Coutinho for 100 million plus. It's a very, very different scenario. And what kind of has led us up to this point is that Arsenal have ripped up the floorboards, rebuilt the foundations, built a new squad, spent less doing so than what Liverpool have since Jurgen Klopp was at Liverpool. And of course, have still managed to be able to be in the title race and be better than Liverpool for the past 2 seasons, despite all of that, and finish above Liverpool for the last 2 seasons. But that doesn't mean Liverpool have got worse or they've regressed or anything like that. They still have been very good. They've still been signing players. They've still been gradually improving as a group. They've added players like McAllister and Gakpo and Kanate in the last couple of years, which of course have allowed them to settle and grow and transition, and now have, of course, established themselves in the group too. So, yeah, they've got one of the best right backs in the world in Trent Alexander-Arnold. They've had one of the most consistent left backs in the world in Andrew Robertson over recent years. And of course, they've got a very decent backup in Tsimikas to him too. Dominic Szoboszlai, of course, a player I've been desperate to see at Arsenal for many years prior to his arrival. And of course, while he's not been like world class, he's still, this season has been probably the best we've seen from Dominic Szoboszlai. And we've seen improved players like that this season. But it's very, very interesting. Jason says, for the 4th time, I'm happy to debate you on this. Last season, you definitely stated you expected Liverpool to drop off. I mean, okay, so you've already changed your tune, Jason, because before I said Liverpool wouldn't be here. Now we're saying that I did say they would be here, but they would drop off, which they did drop off, did they not, at the end of last season? Don't get me wrong. I think Liverpool have surprised me this season. I think they've surprised me. But it's not to say that it was impossible that this would be the case. But it's good to see that, Jason, you're already changing your position. So I guess that's probably quite telling. It's already past. I said I was only going to go for 10 to 15 minutes. We might do a phone-in show tomorrow. We could do a phone-in show tomorrow if you want to see it. And maybe we can get Jason on the show tomorrow. Maybe Jason will show up. Rob says, what's your thoughts on how much we will spend in January? Again, I get asked this all the time. I think that we could spend 40 to 50, but it's impossible to know. It's impossible to know. Jason, turn up to tomorrow's show and we'll get you on. No problem. Make sure you've got a webcam and a quiet place to record, and we'll get you on the phone and show tomorrow. Mohammed says, why are we debating the obvious? Did Arteta do a great job rebuilding the team and getting us to where we are now? Yes. Should Arteta have won more in his 5 years? Yes. Both statements are true. And I don't think that's incredibly wild to state whatsoever. Should we have won more in these past 5 years than one FA Cup? Yes. Should we have done better in the cup competitions? Yes. Should we have done better in the Europa League? Definitely. Absolutely. It's just nuts to me. There's this idea that Liverpool would be horrendous this season. I thought they might not be this good as they are, but certainly the idea that Liverpool would not be good would be nuts, considering what they have been over the last few seasons, indeed. Elton says, tea or coffee? Tea always, mate. I'm not a coffee man. It's not for me. Let's see what happens. Anyway, thank you so much always for tuning in. We'll be doing a phone-in show tomorrow. So if you indeed would like to jump on, particularly I'd like to kind of see some phone-in callers who are kind of challenging tomorrow. So if you're going to come on and agree with me, maybe hold fire. Maybe hold fire tomorrow. It'd be good to get kind of some challenging points of view on tomorrow morning show. So tomorrow, phone-in show, you've got my word. We will do that. You will, of course, need a webcam. You need to be over the age of 18. So, yeah, just get yourself there. Look forward to it. I'd love to see some keyboard warriors show up. I'm not saying Jason's that because it sounds like Jason's going to be it, but certainly others who have been some keyboard warriors over the last few weeks. I'd love to see you in our phone-in show tomorrow. It'd be great to have you. Anyway, have a fantastic Monday morning. Stay safe, stay well, and enjoy yourselves. Stay happy and respectful too. And as always, up the Arsenal.